Yo, what is going on guys, XpertFusion here, and welcome to another Call of Duty Zombies map review. Today, we're going to be looking at Alpha Omega from Call of Duty Black Ops 4. So I plan on going through and reviewing a bunch of maps, not in any particular order, mainly from Black Ops 4, from Black Ops 3, maybe even Infinite Warfare. I'm not really looking to do any like World at War or Black Ops 1 maps because I don't feel like those maps have enough flavor or substance to them to really dig deep into. And when it comes to Exo Zombies in World War II, I just haven't played those maps enough to really have much of a say on them. Although, if you want to hear my opinions on every single map in a ranking order, I did already do a ranking of every single Zombies map in Call of Duty Zombies history. You can check that out, link in the description. Definitely check that out if you want to see some quick thoughts on every single map in COD Zombies history. And I've already done some reviews for Spaceland, as well as the 2 maps that we have so far in Call of Duty Black Ops Cold War, and I plan on continuing doing reviews for all the future maps in that game. As we always do, we're going to be looking at different portions of what makes a Zombies map good or bad. That includes the gameplay, the main Easter egg quest, the story, the atmosphere, the innovation, basically everything there is to do on Alpha Omega. We're going to be talking about it, and I'm going to go over my pros and cons for all these different categories, and in the end we will give the map a full ranking. And it's going to be a fun video because Alpha Omega is certainly a map that I feel like gets a lot of shit throughout the community, but I've always kind of felt it was quite underrated. I don't think it's one of the best maps ever, but I certainly think it's much better than what people give it credit for. So let's hop into the gameplay side of the discussion. Starting with the setup process, this is easily one of the easiest setup processes from all Black Ops 4 maps. All you have to do is buy a couple doors, turn on a power switch, go down to the bunkers, then do a generator lockdown sequence, which takes about a minute, and then after you do that, you have to go turn on 4 valves around the map. You have to just sit there and kind of hold X on it for about 15 to 20 seconds. The only annoying part about this is a bunch of acid zombies come at you while you're doing it, and it can be kind of frustrating if you're on later rounds, but in the early rounds, just put a couple bullets in them because you can shoot while you're holding X on it, so it's not too terrible. Or if you have your specialist weapon ready, even better, or maybe Wraith Fires, so not too difficult. You do all 4 of them, and then boom, Pack-a-Punch is open. There you go. It literally takes you maybe 2 to 3 minutes of the start of the game till then if you're, speedrunning it, and if you're not really trying to speedrun it, it'll probably take you like 5 to 6 minutes. It's really not that difficult. One of the easiest setup processes ever. Obviously, there's more after that when it comes to getting the wonder weapons if you want to get the wonder weapons, or if you want to get the shield or different parts for other things. There's obviously going to be more to it, but just for the main portion of just getting the simple Pack-a-Punch, it's pretty easy. The map layout is pretty simplistic as well. It's very linear. Just like most maps, there's 2 different ways you can go when you start off the map. You can go down the left side or the right side, and they kind of take you through the backyards of each of the houses, and then you can go, in between different houses as well. And they all lead to this little center area, which leads to the main Nuketown section of the map where the power is. And when you open up the power, opens up more of the map, also opens up the bunkers, and then the bunkers take you below, and there's 4 entrances to the bunker all around the map, and they're all on each 4 corners of the main map itself. So this map is very easy to get around, very easy to get from point A to point B. It's really not hard to learn this map because of how linear and symmetrical it is, so it makes for a pretty solid layout. And all areas feel quite different. There's some camping spots, there's some training spots. They have a good variety in locations. There's not too many cramping locations that are too hard to get out of if you're stuck between a bunch of zombies. But honestly, in Black Ops 4, that doesn't really matter that much because in Black Ops 4, you have specialist weapons, you have Wraith Fire. They're really not that hard to get out of corners anyways, so it's really not that big of a deal. One of my favorite features of this map in terms of the gameplay has to be Rushmore. So of course, we'll talk about Rushmore more when it comes to the main Easter egg quest, but when it comes to just using Rushmore for fun, there's like 40 plus codes you can input inside of him to make him do a bunch of things, whether it be read you story quotes that kind of give you more information about the lore of Alpha Omega. Also, he can give you rewards, like he can cut prices in half for doors or wall weapons or for perks. He could also spawn in power-ups for you. He could give you a bonfire sale, which obviously, cuts the price of the Pack-a-Punch like a crazy amount. He can activate this hilarious disco song in the beds area of the bunker. and you go down there and you just party out. Like, little things like this is just so neat. It's not really going to give you that much long-term replayability, but especially for your first times playing the map, especially with your friends and such, you just find out these codes from YouTube videos or from Twitter, and you just input them, and you're like, oh, well, look at that. And a lot of the codes, I mean, you could find out on yourself, because a lot of the codes are just words that are obviously inputted into number format, and you just, you know, find out exactly what that number is. The stuff that most players aren't going to find out on their own, but you don't really need these to have fun with the map. They're just extra things for us hardcore players to have some fun with. And I'd say the best code that you could input, well, two of the best ones. There's one that gives you Undead Man Walking, which is huge for some Easter egg steps. Also, the best one, though, it gives you the ability to have your weapon switch every like 5 to 10 seconds within a 5-minute radius. So basically for 5 minutes, your gun is just switching to a new gun every couple seconds. It's really fun because there's also a gobble gun that does this in Black Ops 3. I'm not sure if they have that same elixir in BO4, but it's a really fun feature because it's just cool being able to switch a gun every couple seconds, and it's a pack-a-punch version of it too. If you have a pack-a-punch gun in your hand at that moment, it'll be that same sort of a pack-a-punch weapon. It's really awesome. It's something I do basically every time I play Alpha Omega if I'm not doing Easter egg, because it's fun to just go around the map and use a bunch of different guns that the game gives you randomly. So yeah, Rushmore codes are awesome. Another fun little side quest is using the mannequin heads. If you knife all of the mannequin heads off in the entire map, there's about 30 of them, you can get a free life. It's pretty simple, easy side quest to do. But if you shoot them instead, if you shoot all the heads off, it'll give you a free perk. What it does is the round after, it spawns in a bunch of mannequins that come at you and attack you. And they're not easy to take out. I completely underestimated them the first time I did this, and I was like, holy shit. And they stockpile right over you because they have way more health than the normal zombies. Usually you come at these in the Easter egg in the boss fight section, so I'm used to them there when I already have some really good weapons. But if you don't have really good weapons, it take a lot of bullets to take these guys down, so they're not easy to take out. But when you kill them, you get a free perk. It's pretty awesome. I wish there was more ways to get free perks on the map. I think that's a big disappointment I have with it. I think a lot of maps in BO4 kind of missed the mark with having ways to get more than 4 perks, unless you use elixirs, of course. Ancient Evil definitely was the best map in this category because you can continuously get more perks through doing challenges, which is just awesome. But unfortunately, Alpha Omega only has one way of getting a 5th perk, and you can only do it once in the game. So if you go down, you lose that perk forever. You can't ever get a 5th perk unless, of course, you use the elixirs. But by far the best side quest in this entire map is the round 200 Insanity Mode Easter egg. This is one of the coolest features they've ever added in a zombies map, in my opinion, and I kind of hope they do this for future maps. I know they did it for Togler Toten as well, but it was just so much cooler in Alpha Omega. So all you have to do, it's very simple. You have to get the kill counter in Nuketown to 15, which is pretty easy. You just keep an eye on it, kill some zombies until it goes to 15. Pretty simple. If you go over it on accident, you have to just kill some more until it goes and loops all the way back around to 15. Then you have to escort an orb and bring it all the way to this little computer in one of the lab rooms. You have to melee the TV with the Bowie knife, and then you take the code that it gives you and input it into Rushmore, hold X, and then boom, next round it puts you into Insanity Mode. And Insanity Mode forces you only in the main Nuketown section of the map, so you cannot leave there for the rest of the game. It throws you in there and you're stuck in the Nuketown only section, like the original Nuketown. You're stuck in that section on round 200. Like, it skips the rounds all the way to 200, so the zombies now have the speed, the health, the everything of round 200, and they're just running at you. And the best thing about it is the fact that old classic zombie songs start playing. It's like the instrumentals of a bunch of classic zombie songs starts playing. It is amazing just hearing all these classic zombie songs while you're rocking out, killing some zombies on round 200. Now, it's very hard because round 200 is obviously very far, and unfortunately, BO4, a lot of the weapons are very, very weak, even past like round 50. So unless you have the Hellion Salvo and some really good wonder weapons and you got your specialist weapons ready, you're probably not going to get that far past 200. But it's still fun to mess with. I think it's a really cool Easter egg. Most of the time I end up dying within like 5 or 10 minutes of starting that round, and most people take like 50 plus minutes to get past that one round. So again, it's not something you can easily do quickly, but it's cool how it locks you in the Nuketown section and it kind of forces you to just play the game like that for a little bit. It's a fun thing to do if you just don't really feel like playing the map anymore and you just want to quit, but you don't want to quit just by being on like round 20 or whatever round you're playing on. You want to quit in style, so you quit on round 200 when you just get destroyed by a crowd of zombies because your guns do absolutely no damage towards them. But it's awesome because all those classic Easter egg songs are playing meanwhile, so it's nice to hear it. Now let's talk about the wonder weapons of Alpha Omega, and I gotta say, I love a few of these wonder weapons, but not all of them. So they went with the really cool choice of giving us different variants of the Mark II, the Reagan Mark II, a classic wonder weapon that we saw back introduced in Buried and has been in a decent amount of maps since then. And it is really cool to see it because not only can you get the original Mark II out of the box, just for players who don't really know how to, get the upgrades. They don't really feel like going through the process, getting the upgrades, although they're not that hard to do. But if you just want it, whatever. Or you can go ahead and get the Mark II frame and use the frame in order to craft variants of it. And there's 4 different variants of the Reagan Mark II. All 4 variants are really not that hard to get. A few of them are a little tricky here and there, but most of the time they're not that difficult to do. You need one specific double pack a punch ability for each of them, and then you have to shoot something around the map, hold X on it, and then use this little canister thing to simply do a simple quest. And most of them are pretty damn easy. For my favorites of the wonder weapons here, we have the Reagan Mark II V, which is the electric one. You have to use kilowatt. You shoot this little panel in the generator room. You get the little canister, then you put the canister up somewhere in like the main area, and you have to then shoot these like poles up in the sky. You just kind of shoot them where there's electricity sparking from them, and then when they all kind of combine, you get kills in the little circle. You get the kills, you hold X on the canister, and then boom, you got your Reagan Mark II. It's such a simple process. These wonder weapons are not hard to get. Some of the other ones can be a little bit more annoying, like you have to use these like teleport panels to kind of move these little orbs around the map a couple times. It's something that's only hard the first couple times you do it, but once you get used to it, it's pretty easy to do. Another one, you have to like perfectly throw a wraith fire into this chimney, which is kind of annoying, but you can also shoot it with, I believe, firebomb you can shoot it with, so it's not the worst thing ever. It just can be a little frustrating sometimes. But let's go over each of these wonder weapons and talk about what they kind of have to offer for the gameplay. Again, my favorite of them has to be the Reagan Mark II V, which is the electric one, and this one has unlimited ammo, and it performs very similar to like the Paralyzer from Buried, and of course the way that it has limited ammo. You just kind of shoot the zombies, it kills them relatively quickly. Pack-a-punching them is always going to be a big requirement for them to do decent damage into high rounds, and of course it also gives them more ammo, so I highly recommend using this one if you want it for especially high rounds, because it's never going to run out of ammo, and also because it's just probably the most powerful one in general, and it's also probably one of the easiest ones to get. So this is like the lightning bow or like the storm bow of this game, because it's probably the easiest one to get and also the best one to get. Next up, of course, you have the Reagan Mark II X, which is the blue one, and you have to use cryo freeze to do this little quest to get to this one. And it's really cool because it makes it full auto, and when you pack a punch it, it becomes dual wielded, which is just so much fun. But it's really not that powerful, especially into the higher rounds, so I wouldn't recommend using this past like round 30, to be honest. Then, of course, you have the orange one, which is the Reagan Mark II Y, and this one turns it into almost an explosive weapon, like a grenade launcher almost. It's pretty decent, but it's not that good, especially getting you out of corners and such. It's not going to be killing that many zombies in the higher rounds. And the purple one is the Reagan Mark II Z, which turns it into almost like a shotgun. I would say this is probably the second best out of all of them, but it's still not that powerful. Again, I think the electric one is easily the best of all of them, and is probably the only viable one for high rounds. The other 3, they're fun to use again, but like I said, once you get past a certain round, they're not going to be doing much justice for you. But if you're just trying to do the Easter egg and you're not trying to go that far into the game anyways, you can really take any of them and you can probably be successful with any of them. So I definitely love these wonder weapons for how unique they are and how they're not just taking different variants like we've seen before, where it's just like, okay, this one's going to be an ice staff or the fire or wind or lightning. No, they go with completely different things to them. There's not specific elements in them that are, we've seen before. They're very different types of elements that kind of fit the theme of this map a little bit better, which is something I definitely enjoy. Getting into the negatives when it comes to gameplay, I think my least favorite thing about this map is probably the boss zombies. Now, boss zombies from Black Ops 4, Black Ops 3, even Black Ops Cold War, I've loved a lot of them. Like, I don't really have many problems with boss zombies in post-Blundell maps. but for some reason, Alpha Omega, they're just terrible. So we have the Nova Crawlers returning, which I absolutely despise Nova Crawlers, so I obviously don't want to see them return, but they're like gassy now, and the problem with these gassy Nova Crawlers, like they're really gassy, is that they gas up nearby zombies, and these nearby zombies who get gassed up with the acid are now way more deadly because they just take way more bullets to kill. So even on like early rounds, you can get stuck in a corner with like a bunch of these acid zombies and they just won't die. They just won't die. They're just like the freeze zombies. I don't know what to call them, the freeze catalysts from the chaos maps, where they come around and they kind of make the other zombies a little bit more powerful so they take more hits. But at least those ones don't spawn in as much. These Nova Crawlers come in like crazy. Like they don't stop coming every single round. There's a couple of them that come in, so they spice up the entire hordes of zombies that you're fighting against, which just makes them more powerful and makes it feel like you're fighting zombies on like 20 rounds further than what you're actually fighting. So it's just not a fun boss to go with. Then there's also the Jolting Jacks, which are just so frustrating because they go at a distance and they shoot at you from a distance with these electric bolts. Now, it's not that big of a deal if there's just a few of them, but on the later rounds, when you're training zombies around and you just get swiped a couple times by some, surprise zombies, and then you're at 50 health and you're like, oh no, I can get away from these zombies, I have decent space, you just get sniped across the map by one of these guys, and it's kind of frustrating. I do like a bit of challenge here and there, but sometimes they're not really that challenging. They're just kind of annoying because you didn't deserve that death, and it tracks you almost. That little shot like tracks you. It like knows where you are, and it's just like, oh, I'm gonna get you. And I feel like a lot of the times they also teleport a lot, which also makes it so they can get to you much easier. I don't find them to be the worst bosses ever. I just think the acid ones, the acid Nova Crawlers, are. Then there's also dogs on this map. They're like electric dogs this time around. I don't mind them. Obviously, they're just dogs, but I feel that they're really uninspiring. I just get sick of seeing dogs like every map, and I think when I keep seeing dogs again and again on maps, I just kind of get like, bro, I just want to see some new bosses, man. Black Ops 3 did a great job with that, with having a bunch of different bosses for each map, not just having dogs. They obviously had dogs on the Giant and Horizon Drak, but then you go to Zetsubo, you had the Spiders, you go to Garage, you had the Valkyries, you go to, Shadows and Revelations, you had a bunch of different boss zombies there, so it wasn't just dogs. I get sick of seeing dogs every other map, so just making them electric doesn't really change them up that much for me, so I'm really not a fan of the bosses on this map. And there's no cool like heavy boss zombie on this map like there is for a lot of the other Black Ops 4 maps. So boss zombies are definitely a huge negative of Alpha Omega, and I think the only other thing I don't like about this map is the fact that every now and then the Pack-a-Punch turns off because one of those valves around the maps kind of leaks the acid, and you have to turn on the valve again. Now, the same sort of a thing happened with Origins, and it's one of my complaints with Origins, how the Templar zombies can shut off the generators every now and then, but that happens like once every couple rounds. Once you get past like round 25 and you're going into the 30s and 40s, these shut off like every round. Like every round, a couple of them will shut off. It's so frustrating because you don't want to be forced to have to go all the way back to these valves every other round to turn them on, especially in later rounds when a bunch of acid zombies come at you while you're trying to do it. It's incredibly frustrating. It's not a big deal once you get to a point where you have your weapons that you want to keep for the rest of the game and you don't need to Pack-a-Punch again, but before that, it's so frustrating. I just think it's a stupid system. If they're gonna have it so it's every now and then, like Firebase C, they have like every 10 or 5 rounds or whatever, they have the special rounds in a certain point where the zombies try to turn off the power of the different sections of the map. That's fine because it's every now and then. I don't really care if the game forces me to do something every now and then, but when it's every round, basically, it just completely destroys the gameplay flow. And I think if I was a high round player, I would definitely not like this map, but again, I'm not a big high round player. I definitely prefer doing Easter eggs, which is why I'm more of a fan of this map than most people, because the Easter egg in this map is actually pretty damn good, which is what we're going to get into next. Alpha Omega's Easter egg is probably the easiest Easter egg in Black Ops 4. That doesn't mean it is incredibly simplistic though, it definitely has some complicated natures to it, but in terms of just how easy it is to complete itself, it's something most zombie players should be able to do without really needing that much skill, which is why I find this to be one of the most popular Easter eggs in this game, because it's one of the Easter eggs that a lot of people could do pretty fast as well. On average, I've noticed it takes players about 45 to like an hour to complete this Easter egg. I think the world record is somewhere like 30 something minutes for solo, and I believe for 4-player it's almost down to 20s. It actually might be in the 20s. It probably is in the 20s. I'm not too sure. I haven't kept up with that too much, but that's still pretty incredible how quick this Easter egg can be done. But it's not that simplistic though. It still has some things in it that require you to use a little bit of your brain, which is why I enjoy it a lot, because I still have to, do stuff. I don't have to just, go around the map holding X on things. There's actual things you got to do, and there's some fun parts to it. The boss fight's pretty fun, so let's just get into the entirety of it. The Easter egg starts off with you having to input 4 different codes into Rushmore to kind of start off the Easter egg, and these codes are pretty easy to find around the map. They're just these little pieces of papers that you find. The only frustrating part about this for most players is that they don't really want to write stuff down when they're doing Easter eggs. People get really annoyed from having to write stuff down in Easter eggs, but as a hardcore player, I don't really care. It's not that hard to grab a piece of paper and a pen and write something down, or use your phone and take a picture of it. Not that hard. It does not bother me at all. It only bothers me when I'm speedrunning it, because it's really not fun trying to write stuff down while you're speedrunning it, because most of the time I'm not going to memorize all these codes unless I'm streaming and I have people in there who put in codes for me. But that's just from a speedrunning perspective. Just from a normal casual, let's just do the Easter egg perspective, it's really not that big of a deal to write down the codes, especially if you're playing solo. Actually, no, there's server pause, so it doesn't even matter. Just press pause, write down the code, and then press start again. It's not that big of a deal, but what I don't like about it is when you're inputting the codes into Rushmore, zombies can still attack you while you're inputting the codes. That is something that I think they should have changed. They should have made it so when you go up to Rushmore and you're going to input the codes, it kind of puts you in this little sequence where you're able to not be hit by a single zombie while you're inputting the codes, because I find it really frustrating having to wait till either the end of the round or just trying to, continuously throw wraith fires at the ground until all the zombies around you just keep dying, or just relying on your shield to protect you. It's not a good idea. I think they should just make it so you can input it with the ease, because that's not something that makes it more challenging. That's just something that makes it more annoying, and nobody wants an annoying thing in any Easter egg. The next step requires you to use the Galva Knuckles to simply kill a zombie next to a TV, and this activates these little codes that pop up with these letters. Now, at first, this seems a little bit too much, but there's actually not that many combinations to this. I think there's only like 6 or something different combinations. And if you have the sheet of the combinations known, which a lot of players who, are on Twitter or YouTube playing COD, they probably know these 6 combinations. So, well, obviously they're not going to know them by heart. They probably have them saved somewhere, which again, this might annoy some casual players, but for hardcore dudes, it's really not that big of a deal. Look at your phone, have it saved somewhere on your computer, and just pull it up when you're doing Easter egg, and you just look exactly at the different combinations, and when you see the first code being given to you, now you know what to do. And you have to go to one of the 6 houses and input this specific code into, it's a specific time actually, not even a code, it's a time, and you input it just the same way you knife it, or you hold X on it, and then you have to do it to all 6 of them, and then you get one final code and you put it into Rushmore, and boom, that gets past probably the worst part of the entire Easter egg. Like, this step doesn't suck or anything, but it's definitely the least thought-worthy step, where it's more of just inputting codes rather than actually doing stuff. So I definitely think this is the worst part of the Easter egg, but once you get past this, everything from here on out is pretty much smooth sailing, and it's actually really fun in my opinion. The next step requires you to escort a red Nova crawler to one of the sections of the map. Now, this part is pretty easy as long as you're being aware of where you're shooting, because obviously you have to shoot these other zombies while you're escorting this Nova crawler, because you have to be pretty close to the crawler in order to get him to you. It's a really just fun step in my opinion. Like, it's not that frustrating. It's pretty easy to fail if you're not, smart with your shots, but I've done it probably 30 plus times, and I have not ever failed myself. I've failed with other players in my lobby, but when it's just me myself doing it solo, I've never failed it, so it's not that bad. After this is a few more steps that kind of lead more into the fetch questy type stuff, where you just have to hold X on certain things on the map, but they require a little bit of thought, especially when you were first solving it during the hunt back in what's map came out like July 2019, which was definitely a fun time. And the next step basically just requires you to get the ADAM unit and get him to scare Marlton, which was really cool for the story, having Marlton be in the map itself, hiding there, which we were all expecting because obviously we knew he was there in Nuketown, so we were all expecting to see him here. It was really cool to hear his voice again. And yeah, it was a nice little part of the map, and you can hear some more story quotes from him later on in the map as well. Not an Easter egg, but just, you know, separately, which is, again, cool. You pick up this little canister, and you have to insert it into that D house, and you just go in there and put it there. And the next step just requires you to have a jolting jack shoot this little panel, which opens up this little fuse you got to pick up and then get to the other side of the map really quickly, but you got to use a teleporter in order to do that. So again, a step that requires you to think a little bit. You're like, oh, I have these teleporter pieces, why don't I use them in some way? And you can use them in order to get to the other side of the map quicker, which the teleporters, I haven't talked about them before, but they're really cool because especially for speedrunners, you kind of can use these in different ways to allow you to get around the map quicker, but you can choose where you want to put them. It's not forcing you to put them in certain spots. You choose where you want to put them, so you can be like, okay, how do I maximize speed in this Easter egg? Well, I know exactly where I should be putting these teleporter pieces to make it so I will maximize my speed. Stuff like that is just really, really cool. One of the coolest things about speedrunning in terms of this map. Next, you just need to get 3 brain-rotted zombies in 3 different locations around the map in order to get codes, which is pretty cool in terms of the story because the people at this Broken Arrow outpost, there's obviously that's the zombies you're fighting are the different, you know, facility members of the Broken Arrow outpost. Rushmore kind of tells you that only they know the codes, so then you have to use your brain. You're like, okay, so how should I be able to do this? Should probably brain rot them, which turns them to your side, so they'll help you out, and they help you out getting the codes. It's pretty simplistic, pretty obvious, and I really like this step for that, especially when it comes to first solving it during the hunt. And then after this, you just have to hold X on a couple different switches around the map in order to turn back on the power after the power shuts down, which is a pretty easy step once you memorize exactly which order these things need to be switched up in. Well, there's no order, but you need to either have them up or down essentially, and it's pretty easy to learn exactly which ones need to be up or down. And then after this comes the best parts of the Easter egg, I would say. The next 3 steps are, I would say, the highlights of the Easter egg, which is a good thing. The Easter egg just gets better and better as it goes on, kind of, which is I think why I like it so much. Easter eggs that are really fun in the beginning but then get really annoying later on are the ones that I really don't enjoy because you just kind of get that feeling of, oh no, now we got this step coming, and we got this step coming, and then we're going to this step. But no, this Easter egg, it's like you just got to get the bad stuff out of the way first, and then you start getting some better stuff. So the next step is, of course, the lockdown step, and there's 3 different lockdown sequences you have to go through. Lockdown steps are always the most fun, in my opinion, because they just require you to kill zombies in small spaces. It gives you a bit of a challenge, but it's also doable, and it doesn't require you to, you know, go around the map holding X on things. You just have to survive in, you know, enclosed space. So if you have decent weapons, this step's pretty easy. All you have to do is then pick up the pieces from the mannequins from each of these 3 lockdown sequences and put them onto this little mannequin in one of the APD rooms, and therefore you get the creation of Peter McCain, essentially. His soul is there, but he's in the orb, so you need to get the orb there first to release him, and this requires you to actually escort this orb around the map. Another really fun step. A lot of people like to use Undead Man Walking for this step, whether it be the elixir or the code in Rushmore, but for me, I don't really mind doing it without Undead Man Walking. I don't find it to be necessary, but yeah. And then after this, you have some nice story quotes, especially if you're playing as Ultimus Dempsey. You have probably the best story quotes between him and Peter McCain, some really touching stuff where they talk about their pasts and such, because obviously they knew each other. So it was a pretty awesome little thing. But then next we get, of course, the boss fight, which a lot of people criticize. A lot of people say it's not really an actual boss fight because you're not really fighting the boss, you're just filling up souls the whole time. But I kind of like the unique take it has on a boss fight, but it still is a boss fight because Avogadro is there. He's still shooting electric bolts at you. He's still doing a lot of damage towards you. Even if you can't physically hurt him, he can still mess you up. You can disable him for a little bit if you shoot him enough, or if you keep, you know, hitting him with your specialist. But it's just a cool little step because it's not like your average boss fight where you just have to keep shooting the boss until he dies. In this case, you have to actually power up the APD by filling up souls around the entire bunker area, which is really intense. The music is fantastic. We'll talk about music later, but it's, oh my god, it's amazing in this boss fight. You just collect the souls, then you bring the Avogadro to the APD room, and you have to hit him into the APD and he gets sucked in, and boom, you basically teleport him to the Hanford site, which is of course where transit is. So this is awesome. The whole boss fight's awesome. This whole couple last steps were just great. A lot of fun. There's a lot of cinematic moments in it as well. Like when the entire room, like the entire area explodes with the nuke right outside, the whole blast goes off because they were, you know, intruders because of Avogadro getting out. That was awesome. The different quotes Avogadro has, it's a little cringy, a little bit like, you know, it's like the cliche, you know, villain type dialogue, but it works for the zombie storyline in my opinion. I don't think we really expect to see some groundbreaking dialogue in zombies, so it's pretty interesting, and it's a pretty cinematic Easter egg. I do think it's a little weird that they just kind of leave right after in the ending cutscene. They just kind of go outside when the nuke just went off out there. Like, I know they're pretty powerful people, but like, yeah, I feel like they die from like radiation or something. I don't know. I think it would have been a lot cooler, and I do think obviously this would be very difficult for them to pull off. But how cool would it be if after you do this, you can still play on the map, but you can go outside of it and the whole place is just destroyed, but you're in like these suits or something to kind of protect you from like radiation or something. That would be really cool. But again, like I said, this Easter egg, one of my favorite Easter eggs in Black Ops 4, but it's not that perfect. I do think it could have been a little bit more longer. There could have been a couple more steps to it, maybe a little bit more like action steps or puzzle steps, as opposed to having those couple fetch quest steps that are kind of implanted in the beginning. Maybe not as many codes that you have to input. Otherwise, still a pretty solid Easter egg for Call of Duty Black Ops 4 Zombies. When it comes to the atmosphere, I'm basically just gonna be praising this game for the next couple minutes because the atmosphere of Alpha Omega is beautiful. I love how the map is all dark and gloomy until you turn on the power, because it kind of gives you low expectations. You're just like playing the map for the first time, you're like, this map's kind of gross looking. Then you turn on the power and wow, the map is just beautiful. The colors are bright, they shine, they pop at you. It is a phenomenal looking map, and the detail in Nuketown is just outstanding. They took Nuketown, the old Nuketown location, which was quite a depressing location, made it much more diverse in its color palettes, and it just gives off this really cool 50s neighborhood vibe that is also turned into like this military research camp, and there's a lot of like spikes around the map and different like traps and barbed wire fences. And it's the only place within a long distance. If you look outside the map, there's like nothing around it. It's deserted, which gives it this isolated vibe. And that's what the music presents. The music on this map is incredible. It gives off this like old 50s town that was turned into an isolated shit zone, like almost like WandaVision, you know, some really old classic type of a place that's not really what it seems to be, and it's isolated, it's deserted, it's alone. That's what the music kind of gives off. The music kind of sounds happy at first, but then it kind of turns dark and gloomy, and I think that's what presents this map almost perfectly, not only in the round change music, but also just in the music that plays throughout the map as you're just walking around, which is just fantastic. And then when you do the actual Easter egg, a couple of the steps actually give you some awesome musical pieces. Of course, even just starting off the map, when you do the lockdown generator sequence to just turn on the power, you get this kind of retro music that starts playing, and you see similar music again when you're doing the lockdown steps within the Easter egg, and also in the boss fight, which has some of the best music I've ever heard from a zombies map ever. It is fantastic. I absolutely love the music on this map, some of the best soundtracks out of most zombies maps we've ever had. And then of course, in terms of Easter egg songs, the Insanity mode plays a bunch of the classic songs from zombies history. Unfortunately, the Kevin Sherwood song on this map is not my favorite. I know a lot of people do love it. It's called The Well. It's sung by Clark S. Nova. It's not a bad song by any means. It's just out of all the Easter egg songs we've ever gotten from Kevin Sherwood, it's probably one of my least favorites. That's just a personal opinion, of course. Music is obviously very, very subjective, so that's always going to be up to personal opinion. But to finish off the discussion about the atmosphere, again, the music presents such a good vibe to this map, and just the design and the look and the colors. It's definitely one of the most pretty maps in Black Ops 4 Zombies, and I definitely have to praise Treyarch for the design and the detail of the look and the sound of this map. In In terms of story, I think I would go as far as to say this might be one of my favorite maps for story in Black Ops 4 or even in the Ether story as a whole, because there is so much to it. One of the coolest things about this map was the fact that it was the first map where we can play as a total of 8 different characters, all with full sets of quotes. Previously, we've had maps where you can play as other characters, like in World War II Infinite Warfare, but there wasn't like full sets of quotes for all the characters. This map literally wrote quotes for all 8 characters, Primus and Ultimus, and having them together in the same map was just such an interesting experience that I never anticipated seeing. Would it have been cooler if they actually made it so there was a total of 8 players available, like up to 8 players on co-op? That would have been crazy, but I didn't feel like we needed it. Just getting one of the random characters out of Primus or Ultimus was already pretty awesome. The fact that this is the last map we ever got to play as them for is kind of interesting to think about. I still think Togder Toten was kind of dumb for making it only with Victus. I think they should have let us play as Ultimus or Primus in some way, shape, or form, but it's pretty interesting to think that this is the last map we've ever gotten to play with these characters. But it's pretty fitting that the last map to play with them, they're all together, which is such an interesting experience, as I said. I love the quotes between the characters on this map. They have some awesome conversations. Playing 4-player co-op on Alpha Omega is such a fun time because you can just listen to the quotes back and forth between the characters, and Black Ops 4 did a great job of having the characters have full-on conversations with one another, way more than they ever have in previous zombie games. They're not just saying the same quotes over and over again. They clearly went hard and recorded a ton of quotes for all 8 characters, which I got to applaud Craig Houston and the rest of the Zombies team during Black Ops 4 because, as I said, they did a great job with it. A lot of people were disappointed with the cutscenes on this map because they weren't your normal CGI animated cutscenes that we're used to. Instead, they were like these 2D sort of comic booky like intros and outros for the map that kind of resemble what we got back in the Victus maps in Black Ops 2. I wasn't really against them. I think they were kind of only annoying when Togder Toten came along because, you know, that's the last map. This is just one map though. I don't mind it for one map, but having 2 maps like that, I'm sure it had to do with the budget cuts and such. They just didn't have the time to do it. Mainly because they were trying to show off a lot of crazy stuff in these cutscenes. It would be very hard to show off all this crazy stuff in an animated CGI-like cutscene, especially the shots where they show off the Great War. There's no way they can do that quickly in, you know, the normal CGI type thing that they like to do. So I don't know. I wasn't against it too much because especially the intro cutscene of this map is actually pretty good. It really does showcase a lot of interesting sides to the whole storyline. Basically, it kind of goes over a lot of what was been happening throughout the entire Ether story, and then the outro kind of tenses up, you know, the tension a little bit, and it builds up this final battle against Dr. Monty, and they even show Dr. Monty killing Maxis, which was really shocking. But I still think the disappointment that came with Togder Toten with not having an actual confrontation of him, I get story-wise it makes sense, but in terms of just overall epicness and scale and scope of the story, it would have been a lot cooler if we actually had our characters fight Dr. Monty in some way in that final map, which kind of bogs down the build-up that this map brought. It's like building up a fight against Thanos. Like you build up the fight in Infinity War, and then in Endgame they just never confront Thanos. Instead, they kind of just do something. They fix the whole problem by not even going to Thanos in Endgame. They just kind of find how to, you know, turn back time or whatever, and then they do it, and Thanos just never comes again. That's kind of the example there. You have to have a final showdown with the person. That's just the most interesting thing for players, and I feel like it would have been much more interesting. So it does definitely hold back the build up that this map had for Togder Toten. But again, there's a lot of good lore there, and a lot of the good lore comes mainly from a lot of the quotes from the characters, and that's why I do enjoy the story on Alpha Omega quite a bit. And then you have the stuff with the Avogadro, which definitely ties up some loose ends. This map was just known for tying up loose ends. I mean, Togder Toten did that a lot as well, but this map tied up a lot of loose ends and did an absolutely fantastic job with that. And I do like the whole Cornelius Purnell thing. Of course, you have Peter McCain coming back. All awesome stuff that I definitely appreciated, and I know a lot of other players do as well, because it's one of the things people do praise about Alpha Omega. If they don't praise the gameplay, they do praise the story in some ways. So I used to talk about innovation for a little bit as well, because I think innovation is a huge part of Zombies. Honestly, I don't think Alpha Omega really innovated much. It was a DLC 3 for this game, so most of the time I feel like once we get later into the DLCs for most games, they usually don't do any crazy things that change the boundaries of zombies. I think there's a few features obviously that are, specific to this map, which is cool and all, but there's not a lot of massive things other than having 8 different playable characters, which I think is pretty cool. So there's not really much to talk about there. Let's just get into the final verdict for this map. I would give it an 8.5 out of 10. Of course, if you guys watched my zombie map ranking, I actually ranked it in the number 13th spot out of the 50 zombie maps that were currently there, and I still think it would be in the 13th spot currently as well, even with including Firebase C and D Machine, because honestly, I think I like Alpha Omega more than Firebase C and D Machine regardless. So yeah, I really do enjoy this map. I think a lot of people give it way more shit than it deserves. Let me know what you guys think about Alpha Omega in the comment section below. Let me know what you think about it in the specific categories in terms of gameplay, in terms of story, in terms of innovation and atmosphere, and just let me know your thoughts. I'm interested to see. So I will see you guys on my next video. Peace out.